Hello, welcome to Global Focus today. My name is Reverend Sharri Johnson, and I am your delighted to be here host. And we have a wonderful guest today. Reverend Dr. Melissa, but we call her Missy Higgenbotham, is the director of educational services for Emerson Theological Institute. But what I want you to know about her is that she has a personal mission, and that mission is to hold the door of consciousness open that all may enter. She's a spiritual mentor and facilitator to and for those on a path of higher consciousness and healing. She helps others align with and claim their highest divine potential and come into a deeper understanding of themselves and their mission, because we all have one, while staying grounded in both spiritual truth and in this physical world as they expand into and as higher consciousness. Now, you couldn't beat that with a stick, but let me tell you a little more about Reverend Missy. She is not only is she the director of educational services, but she also teaches and develops curricula for Emerson. She edits the New Thought Center newsletter called New Thoughts. She has a broad esoteric studies background, which covers New Thought, mysticism, shamanism, drumming, herbal and plant medicines, aromatherapy, crystal healing, color puncture. I want to hear more about that one. Reiki, sound healing, hermetic practices, and a variety of other spiritual and energy healing practices. And, in her spare time, she belongs to the Labyrinth Society, one of my favorite things in the world, and the Sound Healers Association. And she's a labyrinth facilitator and a Reiki master. She has taught workshops on vibration and consciousness in, take a breath, Ireland, the Netherlands, Peru, Canada, the US, and Spain. She's the author of a marvelous book called Voicing the Sound Eternal, Transformational Power of Sound and Consciousness. I've been reading it for breakfast for the past couple of weeks, and it is really yummy. It's the new adjective now is juicy, and that's what it is. And just a little bit more before I bring her into the picture, she earned a BA in music from California State University, Fresno, and an MS in logistics from the United States Air Force Institute of Technology. She received both her doctorate in spiritual studies and a doctorate in religious studies from Emerson Institute and a Doctor of Divinity from the American Institute of Holistic Theology. She's an ordained religious science and interfaith minister and a member of the affiliated New Thought Network, and she's an Air Force veteran. And in her spare time, she reads, gardens, and bakes bread. She's married to David, who loves to travel and makes wonderful coffee to ensure she stays awake through all of her classes and workshops, and he searches out new recipes for her to try, for which he is a willing test subject. Is that cool or what? Please help me welcome Reverend Dr. Missy Higgenbotham.
Who is that masked person,
I'm telling you, I'm going to be looking for silver bullets in a little while.
I know. Where's my horse? Let me.
So start by telling us what it means to hold open the door of consciousness. That is such a, you really ought to be wearing a red leotard with a big red S on the front.
I know. Or something, right? Gosh. I do now have a purple T-shirt that says E for Emerson. So, but it's interesting. It was back in the 70s, and my mom and dad were going to science and mind classes. And my dad, especially, he was driving the car, and I was in the back seat, and he was getting his going through practitioner training. And he asked me what I thought a practitioner's responsibility was. And out of my mouth, no thought at all. And that was about 1975, I guess. So I was 20 something. And I said, to hold the door of consciousness open that all may enter. And that has stayed with me. You know how some things just kind of burrow themselves into your consciousness and stay with you. And so that went with me, that thought, that that earworm, that came out of my mouth through my whole life. And what does it mean to hold the door of consciousness open? And it really is. It begins with you. It's each of us. If wherever we are on where our thoughts are, where our thoughts and feelings are, that level of consciousness, that is the doorway we hold for others. It's if speaking from an energetic viewpoint, it's if we hold the highest consciousness, whether it's grace or love, whatever our focus is, that is what radiates through our energy field. And that's how we are the prayer itself. And so I had a teacher one time back in the 90s, and his name was Gary Bennell, and he came in to teach in Ohio some ascension workshops. And he said that you can get to the point where people could walk through your energy field and be healed. And I thought to myself, I want that. I want that, And so it was, how do you get to that? How do you get to the point, like in the Bible, where they touched the hem of the garment, which is what that meant, touched the energy field. Because if you can hold a consciousness as high as you can, and people touch your energy, they come into your field, they talk to you, that higher level of consciousness is going to start shaking up their energy field. And it's going to plant seeds of light. It's going to start shaking them up, and they're going to, and they may think to themselves later on, I want to do something different, or what am I here for? You don't have to beat them over the head and say, why don't you do something like I do? Why aren't you like me, right? And you just have you just have to hold that level of light and consciousness. And what does that mean? It means that it all starts here, the divine flame within, and you have to clear out all the muck and the grime, and it's not fun. It's not fun to face that. And it's like, you have to take responsibility for your own shadow. You have to take responsibility for your own shit. You have to look it in the face and say, okay, but what's underneath it is the joy. That's what where the joy is. And if we tamp it down and don't look at it, then we get depressed, we get sad. And we say, well, what's my mission? What's my mission? Well, your mission is to be the most authentic self you can be. And you're already the Christ within. You have that, in the beginning was the Word was God. So God made all of us out of itself. So therefore you have the divine flame within. And therefore your whole purpose is just to reveal as much of that and as you can. Get rid of what's ever covering it up, clean the windows of your soul, essentially, and let that radiate. And then you are the prayer itself. Wherever you walk is holy ground, because you're holy anyway. You're God incarnate. You can't help but be holy. So.
Okay, now every word you said makes absolute perfect sense to me. But there's a little kid in the back of my mind going, okay, now, how do you get there by working in the Air Force for an entire time?
I know, and I was newly divorced, and my ex-husband just kept coming over to see how I was doing. And I thought I had a kids group on TV. I was getting my master's in voice, and I was watching all the sordidness backstage in the dinner theater and stuff. And I thought, I don't think I want to do this the rest of my life. I don't think I want to spend the next 30 years just learning repertoire. It was like, it felt so boring, so just one directional. So my parents used to always talk about how they really enjoyed the air, what was it? The air arm of the Army Air Corps. And so I just decided one day to go down and take the test. And they didn't. And so I went into the Air Force. And while I was in the Air Force, I thought that, I'd spend 4 years. I figured I'd spend 4 years and maybe find something different to do, find something maybe that would be exciting or that I'd find different, but at least I'd see something. I was growing up in the area between Fresno and Sanger, California, Central Valley. And I thought maybe I'd find something different than just Fresno, California, where you wore nylons to go to the mall. And it was just such a tight ass place, at that time in 1979, that time frame. And so I joined the Air Force and got sent to South Carolina, where, oh my God, I was one of the few females, and I thought I was conservative. Well, I found out that, oh my God, I thought I was liberal because I had a sister at Berkeley and stuff, and I figured I was liberal. I found out how conservative I was. And so it was interesting going to different places in the Air Force, because you learn about different people and different places, different foods, and you really end up having a greater understanding of people. But what was interesting is that my parents sent me off with the Science of Mind textbook, and I had lots of copies of Catherine Ponder's The Prospering Power of Love. And so as I went, I tried to practice the principles, of knowing my thoughts created, and trying to be a nice person, and not always, type, because there's sometimes things happen and you're absolutely human and you just want to kick someone in the crebuster, and but that thoughts create. So you're there thinking, okay, now how do I stay centered? So I started reading a lot on what warriorship really meant. What does warriorship really mean, and the concept of, and so what are qualities of warriors? Stamina, perseverance, brotherhood, sisterhood, but it's that community, and so there's all these, and courage, and why do people go into the military? Well, there's coded words: be all you can be, the call, service before self. And so people are looking for a spiritual experience. They're looking for something beyond themselves. So I was there, and I had gotten some books like The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, or the Tao.
I love that book.
Yeah, and the Tao of Pooh, and the I Ching, and I was looking for a way through. How can I be centered in when you see all this stuff happening around you? How do you stay centered in the midst of chaos? And how do you perceive chaos? Because I don't want to say it's chaos, because words have power. And so how do you, and I had one, when I was in one assignment, I had a civilian tell me, she says, I want to get out. She says, I want to go fight for peace, and I don't want to be in the defense industrial complex. I want to go out and fight for peace. I looked at her, I said, fighting is fighting. If you fight for peace, you're in war. You're in a war consciousness. So you might as well stay in and hold the centerpiece. So I did my best to, wherever I went, I worked on myself to try to be centered in whatever way I could. You look for teachers, you look for books, and you start practicing different things. You find a way to meditate or a way to focus, in order so that if you can be the point of peace. I thought, if I could be the point of peace, then perhaps today, where I am, they won't go to war. They'll negotiate, because you see, you have what's called, it's ways of power. You have economic power and military power, and you have political power, and it's all national tools of power and things. But the first one is that you use is to talk to people. You is that political arm, political arm of power. And so I thought, maybe today they would talk. They would do that instead of going to war. And maybe if I could hold that, then people around me would get that in their energy field, because you see, nothing's ever lost. They would, there's always that light, because the consciousness gets encoded in your energy field as it's like, think of it as a sound bite, like a sound bite, but it's an encoded light form that's in your energy field, and people pick that up, so if I could hold that, And so I worked on holding it, and then things would come up. You would go meditate, and I got this awakening in '88 where this light came in, and I was given this golden key. And I said, I did the 2-year-old thing. I'm not ready yet. And I was told, well, when are you going to be ready? And I was given this key and given the choice between putting the key in, and it was like a car, like a game show where you get this car. And I was, I had just come into Air Force Logistics Command at Wright-Patterson in Ohio. And that was my assignment at that time. And I was a captain. So I had this key that I was given in the dream state, and I got to either do it for Kentucky Fried Chicken, or I could do it for McDonald's. And so I finally said, okay. And I turned the key, and then this light came in, this golden light came in, and it was stayed there. I could feel like my energy field like expanded for 3 weeks, and that started my conscious journey. But what's interesting was it was like another 10 years before I realized that I was given the choice between chickening out or going for the golden arches. Yeah, pretty cool, huh?
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, and so then I started my conscious journey. I did everything. Pyramids, medicine wheels. Color healing. I became a Reiki master. Then I did Sekim, which is a type of energy and healing, and Karuna Ki, which is another type of energy healing. And I went to the Edgar Casey thing. I was doing Edgar Casey stuff. I was doing, you name it, because I was curious. And I knew I was a way shower. And I just knew that, and I would try different things, and I would say, well, how does it feel? And that's how I learned for my intuition. How does it feel? And does it feel right? Does it feel, what does it do for me? And one of the things I learned early on, because I always went back to Christ consciousness. That was kind of in the midst of all the science of because I also was always up there. I was the music director for United Church of Religious Science, and in South Carolina I was for Unity. Somewhere else I was, and then if I was on an Air Force base assigned there overseas, I was usually in the in North Dakota, which is like being overseas. I was in it was ecumenical. So I did liturgical Lutheran, and I did the ecumenical Protestant, and I did Catholic. So I was a lot of interfaith, but it was interesting looking at the different things and the different ways of the healing and how does it work with me. And I'd always go back to the Christ consciousness. And one day what I said, well, because everybody was channeling, right? So many people were channeling, and I thought, oh, that would be nice. Let me see if I can channel. And not realizing that we all channel. It's just that it comes and we don't recognize it because we think it has to look a certain way. So, but what I did was I said, okay, Christ self. I said, there's going to be a lot of things that I would like to do, but I do not have the discernment to know what's good for me and what's not, because I didn't want to be taken down. I didn't want to, have my energy field go kaplunk. And so I asked my Christ self that if I asked for something that was not for my highest and best good, don't let me have it. And so I had gotten Sinea Roman's book, and it was all about Oren and Dabin and how to channel. And I was following the directions, right? And I was there, nothing happened. And so I go, oh, well, I guess I'm not supposed to do this, and it was so interesting because see, so many people experiment, but they don't have someone to show them the safeguards. And that's one of the things we like to do in Emerson with our new future look, which is sort of like a mystery school. But if you can imagine a liberal arts align always with consciousness. And a lot of us have been through, we know the signposts, and we, one of the signposts, so many people love the feeling of the woo-woo and spaciness, but you need to be grounded so that you don't have a psychotic break, so that you don't have um, your body doesn't go to pieces, because it's just like that V that comes down. You need to be grounded so that you can expand. How do you expand without going crazy? You need to ground, because it's just like the grounding plug in when you plug it into the wall, and so we didn't have anybody to journey with. So it was all experimentation. And so you had to really listen to yourself. So that was my saving grace, was saying, hey, Christ self, don't let me have it if it's not good for me, if it's not for my highest and best good. And I was seeing people, I had a student that I said, you're a great manifester on the astral plane. You need the ground if you want it to come here. If you want to manifest here on this plane. And so it's been an interesting journey. But I always feel like I'm a way shower and a witness. It's like witnessing people, and see, then you go into how do you become the prayer itself? A lot of it is witnessing. It's being able to witness people in all aspects of their life, in their grief, in their joy, to celebrate them, but knowing the wholeness. And how do you know the wholeness of someone? Is because if you're revealing the light inside, and then you understand that the light's not outside, one of the first things you do is you go into balance, and then you go into harmony. You see, harmony is that unification. You balance your chakras, but then you bring all the chakras into a unity chakra. It's like you don't just ground from a grounding cord from one of the chakras. No, you ground your whole pillar. So that when you get information and you speak your word to power, you're doing it from your totality of your God pillar, which is you. Because as you breathe, you can expand it so your body and the pillar become one. And then wherever you walk, you are the prayer itself. And all you have to say is God is. God. Reverend Bill Marcioni from Philly, he talks about practical prayer. And it was interesting because I had something similar, and I called it a pocket treatment, where God is, I am, I know, I give thanks, and so it is, and he does almost the same thing. And it was just really neat, because God is, I am. So God is, and then God animated me. So I am. And Ernest Holmes says that the step of realization isn't really a step. It's a realization that when you do the first two steps, then the third happens, which is you realize, and you can hold that by understanding that it's all here. And then when someone says, can you give me prayer, or can you do treatment for me? You can say, God is, I am, it's done. You can just say done. I used to read Goldsmith, Practicing the Principle, and I wanted to do that. How do you get to the place where you can just say done? God is. And you can look at it as you go. Different people you have issues with are an animal that's by the side of the road, are the ambulances going by, and you say, God is. You're recognizing that God is there in everything. God is the present. No matter what's happening, God is present.
Yep.
God is.
I do that too. I have a little tiny prayer. God is all there is. I am always and never surrounded, supported, and suffused by its infinite and loving presence. And so is everybody associated with that flashing light, or that siren, or that car on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Because I'm driving, I can't stop. But that little essence is there. Yeah. There was a lot of resonating going on when I was reading your book. I did a lot of
yeah.
Which is fine with me, because it wasn't all there was some also aha.
That's great.
And when you balance your with your aha, magic happens.
Oh yeah, that's the alchemy. That's when magic happens, that's the transformation point, Now
I want to know, how did you, again, everything you're saying makes perfect sense to me, and really, really resonates. But I want to know, it sounds to me like you went into the Air Force and learned how to, the side effect of being in the Air Force, the reason, the cosmic reason that you were in the Air Force was that you learned how to gather people together and focus their energy on the right part of consciousness.
Well,
How did you know when you had learned enough to get out of the Air Force and go be a minister? I mean, this is like a math proof where they say, here's the and here's the end, and something happens in the middle. I want to know what the something happens in the middle.
I became a minister while I was in the Air Force. I got out of the Air Force in 2005, but I became a non-denominational metaphysical minister in 1992. There was an organization in Dayton, which is now defunct, unfortunately, because the lady didn't want to let go of the organization. And then she died eventually, but it was the Universal Temple of Truth Foundation. And so I became ordained under that, because every time at that time I tried to do science of mind studies, I couldn't equate with the minister teaching. It was like, there were a couple things, the consciousness, and it was interesting because it's always seemed like the ministers that I ended up at churches with, or that one anyway, he ran off with someone. So that was an interesting thing. But I know, right? And but it always seemed, and then when they taught you treatment, they taught you it was this God is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, blah, 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 blah. And I thought to myself, I'm never going to remember all that. How can you, And so what I did, I had been doing invocational healing using I am. And I am this. And to me, that was the third step of treatment at that time. That's what got me into the realization. I would do, God is all there is. And therefore God is me in action. And therefore I will now speak truth. I am perfect wholeness. And I would work with that with the people I was doing hands-on healing with at the time. And so I got ordained through this Temple of Truth Foundation in 1992. And then it wasn't until later on, because I said, I'm never going to get a doctorate until I find someplace where I can do it in consciousness. And that's when I found Emerson later on. And then it was like coming home with the studies of religious science, because, I had already read the textbook. I used to, in the 70s, I would have the textbook by my bed and I would read a couple pages each night before I went to bed. That was my self-study. And I would read, I'd go home and see my parents and I'd read the Edinburgh lectures, or I'd read Chode, and I'd read Catherine Ponder, and, just depended on what my soul, what felt the spark, and I was reading a lot of other esoteric things. I was reading Theosophy, and I was reading, Edgar Cayce, and I was reading anything about healing. It was like I just wanted to, suck it all up, and just learn about it. And then I thought, oh, and then people started asking me, and I started saying, well, you might want to, they'd say, well, what's this? I say, well, this is this. You might want to go over there and talk to that person. You might want to go and talk to that person. So I thought, oh, I think I'm a way shower, and that's how I got into that business of being a way shower. It just came naturally. I just loved to read and see what felt right. And then I developed my own system, because, everybody is different. So nothing that fits for one person. I do the best Missy I can do, but no one else does Missy like I do. Just like Sharri, you do the best Sharri you can. If I tried to do Sharri, it'd be second best, I can act like Martha Creek, but Martha Creek does the best Martha Creek she does. If I tried to do Martha Creek, it'd be second best. Do you see? So it's like everybody has their own way of doing things. They have their own gene code. They have their own electrical system. They have their own soul. So they have to follow that spark. What's that spark feel like? And that's how you start trusting. And as you open up, you end up, one of the big things in the movement, people want to have the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And they want to be clairaudient, they want to be clairvoyant, claircognizant, and they already are, but they just don't recognize it because it has been so romanticized about what it should look like and what it should sound like. I didn't know until I read some books by Cindy Dale, CyndidDale, that are the best books on the clairs. And because she has you ground, she has you bring in your divine team, she has you connect with the divine. I thought I was the only one that did that with people. She does that. And I thought, oh my God, that's great. But it was reading her book on clairaudience that I realized, because I always got messages through music. I would hear music and I would write it down. I used to compose a lot of music back when I was doing music ministry. And I had like over 50 songs, and I was writing books because I had an angel experience. So I was writing songs about angels, and I was writing songs about, as I went through my spiritual journey, things like give yourself permission, say yes to life. It's a silver day today because someone said it was gray. I said, nah, it's a silver day. Don't you see all the colors? Because I had a picture of snow at home, and if you look real closely, there was pinks and blues. So I said, it's not, and there was silver, and it looked silvery when you stood back, but it's, and so it was. I can't even remember what I was talking about now. But the thing is that people clairaudience, and so the it would come through that way. And a lot of times, if you see things, and you know how sometimes you'll see like pictures or images in the floor or in the walls or something. If
patterns. I'm always looking at patterns, and everywhere I go, I see patterns.
You're clairvoyant, you see, because you see images and you see symbols and stuff, and you understand that. It's just different than what has been commercialized. But the highest form is claircognizance, where it's that feeling, that intuitive feeling. That's where it all comes together. And does it feel right? And when you get that feeling, and that's one of the things I tried to teach my troops was it keeps you safe. If you want to be safe and secure in this world, then you go someplace. Let's say like you're going to take the bus or the subway. Take a moment, breathe, and say, where's the spot I need to be? And then go there. And when you hear someone say something, or you're looking at something and you're wondering, is that good for me or not? Does it feel tight, or do you feel expansive? Your body will tell you. The cognizance, the feeling, the intuitive, your soul will let you know. It's just settling enough to understand the signs that you've had always. You know it. It was just someone told you it was all in your imagination, or that's not real when you were small and you took that as truth, but it's not truth. The truth is that you have them all. You have all the God gifts.
Yeah. About 30 years ago, I started to understand the things that you're saying right now. And how I described it was, I knew I was in the right place because there was a Sharri-shaped hole there.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that it might be a room, it might be a group of people, it might be an organization, but whether or not I was supposed to be there, I could tell, because if I was supposed to be there, there was a Sharri-shaped hole there. I didn't have to work into it. I just walked in and I was there. I think what you're saying, and I learn best by teaching back, so indulge me. I think what you're saying is that what your job has been, what your endeavor has been, is to help people not become, including you, not become something, but discover what they already are.
Absolutely. It's the whole thing is that's what we I had sat down with Dr. Sandy West and Dr. Angie, and and we would sit down and say, okay, how do we help take people from the becomingness? Because the whole thing Emerson had done before was the path of becoming a practitioner, becoming a minister, and take them to the beingness. How do they, I be the prayer. How do you go from speaking prayer to becoming? How do you do like Brother Lawrence says, make everything a prayer? But how do you get to the state of beingness?
You have to remember that prayer is not as a noun. Prayer is a verb, but prayer is also a noun, and it's got 2 syllables. Prayer,
yeah.
And when we become the prayer,
Mhm.
then we become the prayer.
And
the effect of the prayer is inside us.
Mhm.
It's part of who we are and what we are. Oh, I hear you talking.
Yeah, and the thing is that what's really cool is that it doesn't have to be words. All it has to do is you have to be the divine flame itself.
Yep.
Allow it to be who you are, and then allow it to move you. So you can dance the prayer. You can, and that was something that was so holy in the olden days, in ancient of days, was the dancing. Or you can, anything you sing, you can allow that beingness, that consciousness to go out on the sound, because sound is conscious, but sound is a carrier consciousness. Yep. And anything you paint or you crochet or any craftswork, if you settle and become that flame, and your intent is to be the flame itself, you are the prayer in the moment, and that frequency and consciousness will go out in whatever you make, even the cooking and creating a food. It will go out there, and see it's and that's why you can go into an art, you can go into or an antique store, and some things you'll be attracted to and some won't. You go, ooh, that doesn't feel right. It's because it was made, or it was in a home that was not a dimension of consciousness that aligns with what it does not resonate with your level of consciousness now. And so it's and see, dimensions are frequency keyed. So as you go up, as you become more of the divine flame, your frequency of consciousness increases, and really it's like going up in dimensions. And so whatever you create is going to be at a higher level of consciousness. And so that I think is pretty cool,
And I think that the becoming that all of New Thought talks about so much, I think the becoming is real, but what we're becoming is aware of what we already are.
Yeah. And see, and when you become aware of who you already are, you become the doorway. See, you are the portal, the doorway of consciousness to that level of consciousness that you hold. And so wherever you are, there you are.
And for me, it's and I'm pretty sure this is in alignment with what you're saying, but for me, that becoming awareness, it's never finished, because God is infinite.
Mm-hmm.
And because God is what we're made out of. God, we're little drops of God soup, That's one of my favorite metaphors, is that we're little drops of God soup. And it's like a spiral, an upward spiral, except it doesn't get narrower and narrower. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. And we become more and more and more. Mm-hmm. You're never finished. So it's, instead of being a doorway, it's sort of like an escalator. Mm-hmm. Well, like those sidewalks they have at the airport, except it's on a spiral, on a giant spiral, because you can't go backwards. Mm-mm. You can't unknow something.
Mm-mm. No, but you can actually drop in consciousness, so that then you see the world out of different eyes. You see the world out of the fight or flight or type issues, out of more of a duality than out of a community of soul type consciousness. And
so
that's
how do you get to a place where that you don't let that happen to you anymore?
Well, you have to have a consistent practice. So many people think, well, I pray in the morning, or I meditate in the morning. And I always thought that if I have to be consistent, then I have to have a consistent practice. So I use God is, or I am word God is, or something simple that is symbolic of you as God. You see, so I'll use I am word through all that I see before me, or just I am word, and I do that constantly. And I might get my cup of coffee and stand in front of the window. I am word through all that I see before me, meaning that I'm bringing the divine onto everything I see. I am word through my body. I do that, and sometimes I make up a song about it. But the thing is that it's constantly. It might be every hour. It might be every 15 minutes. It's the more you do it, you're entraining your subconscious. You're entraining so that pretty soon the prayer is praying you. So I'll wake up in the morning and the first thing that comes through my mind is I am word, you see. And so it's not, if you just do it in the morning and the evening, it's like, well, that's great, but what about in between? And so in order to have a consistent in order to have a consistent practice, you have to be consistent. But the whole thing is, do something that is 2 or 3 words. I am word. That's great, because you're saying that I am the action of the divine.
Yep.
You see, I am word. And it's a great thing for driving, I am word, and
it's amazing how road rage goes away when you do that.
Absolutely. And the thing is that
and it's not like you noticed that road rage went away. It's later on you go, well, there was a time when that would have really pushed my buttons, and I let him in.
And think and the thing is, it activates a divine flame as you, and which means when you go into the mall during Christmas or something, I am word, and you're actually blessing everybody.
Yes.
And everywhere you go, I am word. People are fighting, you just go, I am word. Or let there be light.
Reminds me
God is.
I was raised in the Catholic Church when I was little, and I remember when there were high holy days, and the priest would have the censer, and he would go like this, and it was I saw him throwing prayers out, throwing blessings out.
Right.
And it's like that's what your whole life becomes, is that you're just spewing blessings right and left and sideways.
Oh yeah,
that's
and people are getting them.
And you forget you're doing it because you're not consciously setting out to do that. It's the side benefit. It's the fringe benefit of being conscious, that it just slops over onto the people around you.
Absolutely, and it starts out as an intention.
Yes.
And that's where your personal will comes into play. It's like it becomes, and then not my will but thy will. So it's like, how do you align your will with thy will? Well, if thy will is blessing us all, we are the blessings. So I mean, my God, we are all bits of God. And so let's make, and we have the creative power because we are parts of God. So let's use it with intent, and then it can actually be automatic because it becomes us. It becomes, it becomes who and what we are in truth. And then it becomes how we serve, because that radiates. You see, we just serve by radiating that truth, because we are the why and the what we are in truth. So we have to radiate, and that's how we serve. So what's our mission? Is just to be the who and what we are in truth. I am word. And that's how God is.
Okay, now I want to know more about. I could listen to you all day, so I'm going to ask you a question now that's generally is my last question. Will you come back?
Oh, sure.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So then
I don't get to talk
about getting it all today. But I want to know about. I read a word in your biography that just pinged on me. You know how sometimes you see something and it goes, and that was color puncture. What is that? Tell us about color puncture.
Color puncture it was started by Dr. Peter Mandel out of Switzerland, and I think it's Switzerland and Austria now. And he developed a system of color that it's using the Korean acupuncture points, and so it's used. And so there's a tool, and it's actually points of crystal that are put, and it's a fabricated crystal because so that it's perfectly formed for a certain reason, and there are different colors, and he has through experimentation, and one of the people that actually helped him was Dr. Fitz Pop, who was a physicist. Who is now, I think he left the planet a couple of years ago, but Dr. Peter Mandel was a naturopathic doctor, and so it's a way to put color. Essentially, he teaches that light carries information.
Yeah.
So you're actually putting information of wholeness back into the body, and there's a whole compendium, of information on it. But that's essentially, in a nutshell, it's acupuncture using specific colors on specific points of the body, but it's using the Korean acupuncture system as opposed to the Chinese acupuncture system, and you can tell the difference because they also use there's an aura imaging machine that they'll like put your feet on, and you'll see where you're blocked, and then they'll use the color and stuff, and you can see the difference of what's happening. And there's a lot of different protocols of the different illnesses that people tend to manifest, and what the different color is, how they will work with them. But I've always been fascinated by color because it's frequency.
Yeah.
And way back in the 80s, I was reading books from Britain on chromotherapy, and they had little houses and used geometric symbols and color, and Dingsha would use, there's a Dinsha system up that came out of Canada, DINSHAH, and they would use the frequency of color filters like you would get filters, and I think they use glass, but now they have them to where you can actually, it's like remember the filters that they would use over spotlights?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's certain ones, and there's a whole system with that. But it has to do with your with frequency, with the frequency of color. So
that makes sense because everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything is energy, and how fast it's vibrating is how solid or how not solid it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so all of those, I'm reading this and I'm going, ooh, wow. Oh, cool. It makes my before I was a minister, I was the computer science instructor in college. And,
mm-hmm.
and before that I got a degree in math and physics. So I love that. Mm-hmm. One of the things that New Thought is doing as a sort of a side effect, I think a fringe benefit, is that a couple of millennia ago, the people who were in charge of government realized that, if they could control science and they could control religion, then they could control people. And so mm-hmm. they said, this is how science and religion interact. When mm-hmm. in fact, science and religion are a continuum. Mm-hmm. And that's what's being brought forth and made clearer. That's what you're saying today. Everything you're talking mm-hmm. about is the fact, the truth that we are just focusing our science instead of on how to make war. We're focusing our science on how to make consciousness, mm-hmm. how to expand consciousness, and I just absolutely adore that.
Yeah, it's fun, the consciousness, and what is consciousness. Everything is conscious. I had people say, well, that table isn't conscious. And yes. I was seeing blue energy come off of it. And I go, yeah, there's a conscious, there has to be, if everything is God, then ergo.
You start there and the rest of it follows.
Yeah. And so it's been an interesting journey, and I'm still enjoying it. My students, they'll say, can we talk about this? I go, oh, sure. Yeah, let's talk about this. What do you want to know? And I get to learn. I get to learn just as much. And that's one thing, you never have a teacher that thinks they know everything, and I love learning. I love, finding about different things, and but I love talking about the consciousness. Consciousness is in everything, and a lot of times people don't always understand that, and they go, "Ooh, let's don't talk about that," or "Let's don't talk about that." And the movie 1776, the guy from Rhode Island says he never knew that there was anything that you couldn't talk about. And it's like, why not? Why can't we talk about
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that, that's part of New Thought is that,
Mhm.
I love the name because it isn't new. And, and,
Oh, I know.
and it wasn't new when Swedenborg talked
Mhm.
about it. I mean, it hasn't ever been, well, it might have been new, but a couple millennia ago.
Yeah.
But the thing about New Thought is that not so much that we teach people how to think or what to think. It's that we give them permission to
Mhm.
think uncontrolled thoughts.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
We
I
give
think
them
that's
permission to just unhook take the lid off. My favorite Ernest Holmes quote of all time is, "We must remain open at the top."
yeah.
The best teacher I ever had was in a junior in high school. No, sophomore in high school.
Mhm.
My best friend and I talked it was a Catholic high school, and we talked the nun who taught biology into letting us take the class, even though it was a junior class and we were sophomores.
Mhm.
We were the only sophomores in the class. And one day I had one of those, "What are the rest of these people doing here? She's obviously talking to me" moments, because she said, "No tree ever died of old age.
Mhm.
Trees only die when some outside force causes them to stop growing." Open at the top.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Open
And
at the top. That's
Mhm.
the single most important thing in New Thought is we must remain open.
Being open at the top. And see, that's one of the things why we changed the symbol for Emerson. We took the roof off and made it
I
open.
remember.
Yeah, yeah. And we put cognoscite uh, cognoscite primum cognoscite deus down at the bottom. Know God first. And yeah. And sometimes when you don't use the term for a while, you forget. Um, uh, so it would be cognoscite primum deum, I think. Anyway, it would yes, primum cognoscite deum. I got my book.
No God.
No God first. But we put it down at the bottom because that was what the basis was. That's our foundation. No God first. And but one of the things that we've started doing, we actually have a couple students that are now in our wisdom studies program, which is not up on the website because I haven't finished writing all the narrative that goes up with it. But we do have a degree in wisdom studies and a certificate in wisdom studies, which covers all the some. They would take some of each of the new classes. The wellness and nutrition, the stewardship classes, the vibration classes, the consciousness classes, the wisdom classes, the alchemy classes. And it's just exciting because it's when people say, well, this is my background. And I go, oh, that's good. We can do that, because we have everything from mythology to shamanism, to the clairs, to marsupials, and but the thing is that it's all you know aligned with consciousness. It's not just finding the intellectual stuff. It's well, why do you think they're here? Or what's the purpose? What's the consciousness? And because we want people to think. It's like it's we want people to have to be able to understand people around the world. And so it's like it's so when you talk with someone, do you understand where they're from? Do you
Yeah.
understand that? Yeah, they're different. Isn't that wonderful? Can we celebrate that? And so we wanted to bring that into being, and expand that. So it becomes the a practitioner, ministerial, but then we have this other part that's can we grow greater human beings into a greater knowingness of who and what they are in truth.
That is the answer to the last question I usually ask each guest. There are two questions before will you come back that I usually ask. And I'm going to ask them now because we're fixing to run out of time. The first one is, and I'm pretty sure you've answered it, but just in case there's something you want to add, how does your ministry increase or enhance conscious evolution?
You know, my ministry is just the whole consciousness. And when you do that, it gives permission. It gives permission for people to be the most authentic selves they can be. And that's what people are waiting for, I think, is they want to be seen. They want to be known. They want to be given the permission that they are, in truth, the most wonderful creative beings in the universe. Each of them is different, but that's what makes, I would not want to have a garden of all the same flowers. So it's, I think by being able to see the truth about people, that they are holy, that they are pure at their very core, that they are God in action, that's the best gift I can give people.
Okay, and here's the last one. How does your ministry enhance or promote or move forward world peace on earth?
World peace and peace on earth. It starts with each one of us. We can't do it outside of ourselves. Yeah, there are people that their mission is to negotiate, to go to council, but others, you have to hold a template. I used to call it holding the template behind the template. You have to have the peace within you. If I don't have peace within me, then my first reaction to a trigger is going to be fighting. That is a warlike attitude. That is a war consciousness. And so peace on earth isn't the song, it begins with me. It's each one of us. We have to work and get rid of the stuff, the muck and the grime. We have to polish up our own soul. We have to and settle within that flame and breathe peace and be the peace itself. And by being peace, then it starts having the ripple effect. Because that's how then we react. We model that reaction to life through who and what we are in peace.
Yeah, we do. Thank you so much. I can hardly wait for you to come back. And please be here next week, folks, because our next guest, Dr. Missy knows too, is Reverend Dr. Brock Ford, who is an amazing minister. And his ministry is working with the unsheltered folks. So I think that it's going to be different from anything we've done so far, which is pretty much true every week. And I hope you'll come and join us next week, same time, same station. And Dr. Missy, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Amazing. Amazing, you will do amazing things.